And you teamed with Hulk on a lot of occasions. What was that like?
Yeah, it was good. You know, Hulk was quite the character. I used to like to rib him a lot. You know, and he was something else.
What was Hulk like back then?
He was a good guy. He was one of the boys. You know, he still didn't have the push that he wound up getting years later, and he was a pretty good guy at that time.
Do you feel he was a better worker back then than he was later years? Or?
Oh, well, without a doubt. You know, he never was a great worker. He was always a good talker, had charisma up the kazoo. I mean, this guy has unbelievable charisma, but he was never a great worker.
Did Hogan change at all now that he was in WWE on top?
I never really hung out with him a lot, but I think he did. You could see there was a change in him. You know, like he took care of the guys that were his buddies because it was just a big clique there. Everybody had their own little clique, their own little crew, and they looked out for each other. I was always the outsider, and that worked in my gimmick well because I was the loner and I didn't have no partners and all that, so it worked good for me.
What do you remember of your first main event against Hogan in New Jersey?
In New Jersey, like I always said, Hogan had charisma. He was a great talker. He wasn't a great worker. But I knew if you got on the show with him and you were out there as a heel, you're just going to be blown over because people just love this guy. Because I remember the one time in Nassau Coliseum when I worked with him, I think it was like 22,000 people or something. You could not hear yourself think when he came out to the ring.
It was that loud?
That was that loud.
I guess we were talking about payoffs a little bit. You talked about the worst payoffs that you got was like $250. What was the biggest payoff you got?
Okay, wait a minute. That wasn't the worst payoff I got. The worst payoff I got was $5.
For Titan?
No, it was for Mike LaBelle.
Oh, okay.
Because my partner, Victor Rivera, was having problems with his wife. So he didn't show up. So he asked me, he says, can you put in some time, work with all three of the Guerrero brothers? So I worked an hour and a half. I worked a half an hour with each one. And we'd go Broadway. And then I said, okay, bring out another Guerrero. And I'd wrestle with him half an hour. Bring out another Guerrero. And he said, oh, don't worry, I'll take care of you. Next time I look, I got extra $5. I go, okay. So he said, you know what you did last week and what you did again? No. You pay me what you was going to pay Victor, and I'll do it. Otherwise, I ain't doing it. Oh. Yeah. That was my worst. But my best payoff was with New Japan Pro Wrestling when we went to Pakistan.
Wow.
That was my best payoff. We had like 80,000 people show up there.
I guess as far as JYD now in WWF, was he a mess by the time you got to work with him in WWE?
Yeah. He had his problems, and JYD had a lot of his same thing with him. He had a lot of charisma and good talker. He wasn't a great worker at all, I don't think. But he had his problems.
Just a personal question: when they went to Pakistan, why did they draw that big house? Who did Inoki wrestle? That wasn't it some Indian guy? Or
well, actually, the first time he wrestled one of the Bula brothers, which is a big, famous wrestling family there, and he actually broke the guy's arm.
Really?
Because the guy wouldn't sell and Inoki broke his arm. So as far as the Indians was concerned, he was the greatest shooter ever.
Right.
Which he wasn't.
Right.
So then the next time we went with the 80,000 people, I was on the show. It was because of Inoki.
Right.
Yeah.
Why would you say that was so strong to draw 80,000 people at that time in a country that there's probably not a lot of wrestling?
Wrestling.
Did New Japan market itself in that area?
Yeah, they were sending tapes over there, but the reason it was strong because the people love wrestling there in India and in Pakistan. They're the same people. They just what divides them is religion, but they love wrestling. So when they heard that Inoki was coming back to Pakistan to wrestle, they turned out.
So would you say, like in your wrestling career, Inoki was probably the biggest draw of anybody you ever worked with?
Yeah,
more than Hogan, more than...
Yeah, because Inoki could go all over the world and he could draw. Hogan was big in the States, and years later, once Vince's TV started going all over, then he became strong. But Inoki was strong all over the world. Wherever he went, he always had me follow him. I'd go with him. He'd take me with him. And actually, when we were in Pakistan, I wrestled him. They had a tournament. And the tournament boiled down to him and I because I was an Olympian and everything. And at that time, it was the time of the Olympics. And people believed in what they saw. So, and I told Inoki, I said, Tony, I was sick as a dog. I was there sick for a month. I was sick for 2 weeks there and sick for 2 weeks when I got home. And the last day we were there, we were in the shower. And I told him, I said, Antonio, you take me a lot of places. I appreciate it. I wouldn't care if you gave me $2 million. No, make it $3 million. I'll never come back here again.
What are your early memories of Dusty in WWF?
Dusty in the WWF?
Yeah.
Well, actually, the first time I met Dusty, they just brought me in from Japan, and we're in the locker room, and S.G. Jones came in.
Right.
And he started talking to SD, and he started using the N-word and this and that. And I'm sitting there. Now, this guy don't even know me, right? You know, what gives you the right to even say that? So I didn't say nothing. I just, okay, all right. So now, after he left, I called SD over, and I called him out. And I said, why did you let him talk to you like that? What's wrong with you, man? Oh, he's my man. I said, no, he ain't your man when he's talking to you that way. You never let nobody talk to you that way. What's wrong with you, man? Oh, okay. So now, 6 months down the road, I'm in Japan. There's the Madison Square Garden Tag Team Tournament. He's on there. Stan Hansen and Dusty against Dick. No, excuse me. I got it wrong. It's Dusty and Inoki against Stan Hansen and me. They wanted me to do the job. Sakaguchi sent a word over. Okay, let Dusty pin you. So you go back and tell Sakaguchi that ain't going to happen. And I never refused to do a job for anybody because I didn't care.
Right.
I was in this to make money. I didn't have the big ego. Sure. What do you mean he ain't going to do that? That's what he said. He ain't doing it today. They wanted to beat me, let Inoki beat me. And Dusty ain't happening today. You know. So then finally, they said, okay, we're going to change it around. Inoki's going to beat Allen. And he goes, for why? Said, you go talk to him, right? So he came over and he asked me, well, why do you want to do it for me? I said, the truth of the matter is, I don't like you. And I said, you try something in the ring and I'm going to stress the hell out of you. And that's the only time I ever threatened anybody in the ring. And I meant it too. I said I was going to beat his fat butt in the ring. And so Stan goes, just don't go crazy. Okay, so what are we talking about, Dusty?
Dusty.
Okay, so I told Dusty, I said, it ain't going to happen today. I'm not doing no job for you. So now we get out there, and Stan and I, we're beating the crap out of him. I mean, we're just throwing him everywhere. He's taking bumps all over the place. When Inoki would come in, we would sell like a champ for Inoki, right? So now we get into the bus, and Stan's sitting in the back, and I'm sitting across from Blassie, and I call him the general. And he comes in, and he's almost like in tears. He's going, those guys, they didn't give me anything in the ring. And I turn around and I look at Stan. He looks at me, and we both just bust out laughing and said, "Sometimes it bees that way."
Is it true that when he came into WWF, did you ever go to Vince about Sapphire's name?
Yeah.
Okay. I know Slick did too, I think.
Yeah, that's a true story. This is when they came up with this thing of, well, which comes going to go half black, half white. Well, you heard what I said down there.
Right.
That
we're going to ask you about that
okay.
too.
Yeah. And how do you think this is going to go? This is going to go over great. This is going to be big. I'm lying through my teeth because I figured one of the brothers is going to kick this guy's butt, man. Because I couldn't stand Piper. But I told him, I said, Vince, one other thing too. I said, let me explain something to you. I don't like the idea that you insult my people when they go, what do you mean? I said, you called her Sapphire. I said, that was a racial slur towards black women. I said, you better change her name. Oh, I'm going to do it. I didn't know. Nobody told me he's lying because he's just a few years younger than me. You know? Right. He knew that came from the Amos and Andy show. He says, I'm going to change the name. He called her Sweet Sapphire. You know, like, give me a break.
How did you find out that Piper was going to wear the blackface and stuff?
Oh, they called me in the office and told me they were going to do it. This is when I called Vince on the thing about Sapphire. Right. Her name.
What was your reaction about the Pipers?
Well, I thought it was the stupidest thing I ever seen. And I figured, let him go ahead and do it. And one of these brothers is going to get, in one of these towns is going to get a hold of him and he's going to be sorry.
When you told Vince about that, what was his reaction?
Well, he thought, we think this is a great idea. This is good. What do you think? Yeah, it sounds great, Vince. Huh. And then after Piper left the room, then that's when I told him about Sapphire. And, I didn't like the idea that he was calling her that.
The one match you guys had was a double count out. Why was there not a decisive finish?
Well, because he was bitching and complaining. He didn't want to. They actually wanted him to put me over. Right. He didn't want to do it. And I said, look, man, I'm not about winning belts. I'm not about winning some phony championships. Right. I'm about making money. You going to pay me? I don't care what we do. One is I ain't going to do no job for him if he ain't going to do one for me. So we could have how about a double count? Sure, no problem.
Do you think you should have went over anyway because Piper was part-time and you were there full-time?
I thought so, but they didn't. And then especially when the pay disparity wound up, he wound up getting $50,000 US and they paid me $10,000 US and 2,000 Canadian. I really, that was it. I said, this is it. I had enough of this.
Did you know Piper from California?
No, I never met him in California. The first time I met him was in Japan. He came over. He was the Canadian masked man or something.
Mm-hmm.
I guess when you worked with Jake, what was he like at the time? Did you like him?
I love Jake. I still do. You know, like I said, he's one of the top 3 talents that I enjoyed working with. Dynamite was always my favorite. Jake was second, and Ricky Steamboat. You know, Jake has his problems. It's well known. You know, but as far as the talent goes, the guy was great. And I love working with him. It was a night off. When I worked with him, it was a night off.
What about wrestling Inoki? What was that like?
Same with him. He was the Japanese Hulk Hogan. The guy knew how to just put over a show. He knew how to put people in the chairs. A great talker, you know, amongst the people. He had this aura about him that just people just fell in love with him. But he wasn't a great worker.
Ken Matera, he was over there at the time.
Yeah, Ken. Same with him.
Huh.
Ken's a good guy and everything. He wasn't the greatest worker in the world, but Ken was a good people. If you had a match with him, you knew you were going to get out in one piece without injuring yourself.
Was Tom Pritchard over there at
Yeah,
all?
he was there too.
Huh.
Actually, a funny story about Pritchard. One time we were up in Sapporo and we had a day off and we went to the strip club and they got Tom drunk and Andre was with us and let's see, Jeet, Singh, Waiter Marutsky, myself, the Samoans. And we go to this club and they got Pritchard just bone drunk and they took his clothes off in the club and he's standing there, you know.
Huh.
And so they finally, the Yakuzans run all these clubs and the head guy came up to me and says, Mr. Allenson, he says, please, your boys must leave. They're making too much trouble. So I got everybody, we went outside. And then the Samoans got in a fight with Tiger Just saying,
Offensive.
yeah.
Huh.
They got in a fight and Alpha Seeker and they went crazy. So now the police come to riot. The Keto Tai came to riot police. And I'm standing there with Tom and I'm holding his clothes and he's buttoning and I'm trying to get him to put on your pants and we get him to put his pants on and we get him to put his shirt on. And now the cops come and they arrest the Samoans and they arrested Tiger and Waiter and then they were going to arrest me. I said, what are you arresting me for? I didn't do anything. You know, I'm trying to break this thing up. I said, no, I'm going back to the hotel. And I got Tom and I'm dragging him along and I'm making him put his clothes on and everything. And it was like maybe 2 feet of snow there, you know, and what a day that was.
Huh. Now, also Tiger Jet Singh, we talked about earlier on. So he was pretty much for himself.
Oh, yeah.
What
Tiger
about
was,
as far as his gimmick? And did you like working him back then?
Yeah, I worked with him as his partner a few times, and his gimmick was unbelievable because, the first time I seen him, I couldn't believe it because I know in the States here, you know, like they sue you for anything. You know, you look at somebody wrong and they want to sue you, and he was out there beating people with the swords and everything. I'm going, is he crazy? They're going to sue him. They're going, nobody sues in Japan here, you know?
Yeah.
And I said, oh, wow, okay. You know?
That's awesome.
I like this.
Was there any competition between, since he was like the top heel and you're coming up, did he like?
Well, not with me, but it was a lot of competition with Dusty and Stan Hansen and people like that because they were sort of jealous of Tiger because Tiger was the top heel. And without a doubt, he was the top heel at that time. And I remember we had that Madison Square Garden tournament and everybody had to compete against everybody. And they were arguing in the back who was going to be the heel of this match between Stan Hansen, because he was one of the top heels, and Tiger. And so finally they said, well, let's let the people decide. When they go out there, whoever they cheer for will be the babyface. And Stan went out first. First he didn't want to go out. And then they said, okay, they flipped the coin. They made him go out. And the people took to him because they liked Stan. They cheered for him. And as soon as Tiger came out, he started beating the people up and throwing chairs and went crazy. And he had a Waiter with him. And Waiter was trying to hold him back. And we said, oh, I guess we know who the heel of this match is. You know?
Memories of Peter Maivia.
Great guy. I loved him. He was like a big brother to me. He gave me a lot of good advice. When I came to New York, he just made it a point. You ride with me. He said, wherever we go, you go with me. And I go, okay, you know, no problem. You know, and he was a hell of a guy, and he was a tough guy too.
No, in LA,
legitimately.
In LA, you teamed with Bobby Duncombe too, right?
No, I actually met Bobby in Japan.
Okay.
And he was at that time that we went to that strip club and got in a he was with us also. That's right.
Did you enjoy teaming up with Abby too?
I enjoyed working. I enjoyed socially being with Abby. Working with him, yeah, he was quite the guy. He used to get me in trouble all the time because he was making big money there. And the office will call me up every single night and they go, Alan, you got to control Abby. I said, how am I going to control that big fat guy, you know? You got to tell him we don't do things like this. I said, okay, I'll tell him. I go, okay, Abby, you can't be going and doing this, doing that. Yeah, okay, champ, don't worry about that. So before we go on the match, I said, now, okay, Abby, now don't be, destroying the merchandise and all that kind of crap. Okay, champ, I won't. Well, of course, he would just do the opposite of what I told him. He'd go out there and deliberately, and I know the office is going to call me up. They would, as soon as I get in the ring, as soon as I got in the room, the phone would ring. And it was the office. And then we tell you blah, blah, blah. But it got to the point I wouldn't answer my phone. I can't, because I know it's them giving me heck about it. And I told him one day, I said, well, how come you don't tell Abdullah? Why are you telling me? He said, well, you've been here longer than him. So, well, what's that got to do with anything? Right. No, you've been here. You're the senpai. You're the senior, so you tell him, oh, police. I said, well, pay me the money that you paid him, because he was actually the first guy over there that was making $10,000 a week.
Wow.
Yeah.
Was there any professional jealousy between Tiger and Abby?
Yeah, there was. Because Abdullah was the top heel for Baba in All Japan, and Tiger was the top heel for Inoki in New Japan. So there was definitely, I heard that they did a match over there. They drew the first $1 million house ever in the wrestling business. But there was so much jealousy there.
The match was terrible.
I heard it was. Yeah. I never saw it, and I like to see it one day, but I heard it was terrible.
It was real
Everybody
bad.
said it was terrible.
Did All Japan ever try to contact you at all?
No, actually, when I left, I contacted them when I left New Japan Pro Wrestling, and because I left there, they stopped booking me after I came back from the WWF, and Inoki left the company because he told me, he said, you always have a home here. You come back here, we'll always take care of you. But when he left, and they got all these other guys in charge, and they stopped booking me. They were booking me like twice a year. And so I called up All Japan, and they actually told me straight up front, we're not interested in you. I was, okay, fine, no problem.
Were you around when, or how was the locker room like when the Funks jumped in, was it 81? The whole thing with Hanson and all that? Okay,
it's a funny story. When Hanson knew he was going to jump, but I asked him, I said, when are you coming back with tour? He says, because I seen him taking his stuff off the bus. We used to leave our stuff on the bus because we were on every tour, right?
Right.
And I seen him taking his stuff on. I said, when do you come back? He says, I think I got something to do. Well, he jumped. They never said nothing to me, but where I got heck at was when the Bulldogs jumped. I was in Mexico, and I had no idea these guys were going to jump to Baba's company. And I get a phone call in my room, and I'm in Mexico City, and it's the office. Sakaguchi's there, and he's got Chica, who was the translator. She was living in L.A., and she started giving me heck, and I'm going, you knew about it, you should have told us. I have no idea what you're talking about. Well, they went over to Baba's group. I said, well, what am I supposed to do? I can't babysit these guys. Well, you live in the same town. What does that have to do with anything? I said, yeah, I live in the same town, but the thing is, I don't see these guys unless we're on tour. When we're home, we don't hang out socially, so I don't know what they're up to.
Right.
So you can't be blaming me for it. But that's the way it works.
You also got to work with Ultimate Warrior, and over the last couple of months, there's been a lot of talk with Ultimate Warrior as far as him being a worker and stuff like that in the ring.
Well, Ultimate wasn't a great worker. He didn't like the business, but he made a lot of money. But he just hated the business. He really did.
He was just in it for the money.
Yeah, he was in it for the money. So was I. But I tried to do my best. And actually, we always tell a story about us being in Bakersfield. Vince and Pat came to me and they said, okay, because they were pushing the Ultimate Warrior. They said, we want to have a dark match with you and him. We want to see what it looks like. And we want you guys to go about 10 minutes.
Huh.
Okay, fine. Put him over. No problem. So we go out there. So Davey Boy and him hung around. And Davey asked him, who are you working with? He says, bad news. Go, oh, boy. What? He got over it. He said, man, that guy's going to blow you up. He said, he's always in great shape, Because I used to blow Davey Boy up all the time. He would turn purple. So now we get in there with the Ultimate Warrior. He comes, of course, I go out to people booing, and he comes out. He's running around the ring, and he's shaking the ropes. Now he's blown up.
Huh.
We're not even into the match yet. But now we got to go 10 minutes, right? And we're going, and we're working, and I've got this guy going all over the place, right? So now the match is over with. He pins me 1, 2, 3. I leave the ring. I go to the back. I hear this. What the heck is that? I look. It's him. They got 2 ushers carrying him in the back, right? And I go, Jim, are you okay? He's like, purple. I thought he was going to have a stroke. Right. I said, thank you, bad news. Yeah, I'm okay. So now they said, okay, you don't have to do no interviews tonight. So I told my wife, she was with me. I said, okay, just go wait for me in the car. I'm going to take a shower. I come out. So I get in the car and my wife is laughing her head off. I said, what's the matter? She said, did you see she said, I know you didn't see it, but did you see the Ultimate Warrior when he left the ring? I said, no, because I went back to the locker room. She says, well, as he's walking up the aisle, you know, they have those railings, the people stand there. She says, as he's walking up, people on both sides passed out. I said, passed out? What are you talking about, passed out? She said, yeah, they passed out. What are you talking about? I said, yeah, from a lack of oxygen. So he came back, he sucked up all the oxygen over there. And I just fell out laughing. I said, okay. But I got along with him. I liked him. He asked me a question one day. He says, I got a question to ask you. He says, because I know that you're going to tell me the truth. Not like these other guys, right? He says, Vince wants to know how much money I want for this match with Hogan in Toronto. How much should I ask for? I said, $1 million. Really? I said, yeah. He's getting $1 million. He can't wrestle himself. Why shouldn't you get the same? $1 million. He says, are you sure? I said, I'm telling you, man. All the guy can say is no. He asked him for $1 million, right? So, okay. So now we're in Phoenix, Arizona. We're wrestling there. Then we have 3 days off. Now he's going up to Titan Towers. And he asked me, are you sure? I said, hey, just ask the guy. All he can say is no. What, he's going to beat you up or what? He can't do that, you know? He says, okay. He tells me, I see him 3 days later. I said, how'd it go, Jim? He says, it went unbelievable. He says, I walk in and Vince is always, hey, man, how's it going? He's always with the BS, right? And then he says, okay, what do you want for this match? And he says, $1 million. He says, you paying him $1 million, I want $1 million too. Vince goes, okay, that's fair. Wow. And then I said, okay, you remember that. You owe me a dinner.
Wow. Did he pay up with the dinner?
Never came up with the dinner.
John Studd, you got to work a little bit with him.
Yeah, I like John. John was a good guy. He's one of the good people in the business. You know, he broke my heart too when he passed away the way he did. But I liked him. He was good. But I used to tell him all the time, John. He used to take these growth hormones or something. I said, what are you doing that for? You're a giant already, man. His thing was in his head, he wanted to be bigger than Andre. So that ain't gonna happen. All right. So why kill yourself, you know?
What about Herc? You worked a little bit with Hercules.
Yeah, Hercules was a good guy too. Yeah.
Bruce Beefcake?
Good guy, super guy. I enjoyed working with him. I knew him from Japan also.
Right.
And he was like almost like a brother to Hogan, you know. But he was good people. He wasn't that talented though, but he was good.
Ronnie Garvin and his chops. Any stories there?
Oh yeah. When they told me I'm working with Ronnie the next night, he's in the babyface locker room. I walked out the locker room, went over to the babyface locker room, and I said, Ronnie, I understand you and I are working tomorrow. Oh yeah. Piece of advice. What's that? Leave the chops in the locker room. What? I said, leave the chops in the locker room. I'm not going to say it again. I walked out. So Earl Hebner was sitting in there playing cards. He couldn't believe it. He said, oh, did you hear what Ben said to Ronnie, man? I meant it too. You give me one of those chops, you're going to get this right across the chops.
Did you have a pretty good rep in the locker room as far as being a tough guy?
I think the guys thought that. I don't know why, you know, but I was a no-nonsense guy. I didn't mess around. I didn't rib you. You didn't rib me. I come in to do my job, make money. You let me make my money and go on about my business. But don't start up with me in the ring, because then you're going to have trouble.
Do you think Haku is the toughest, probably?
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. Without a doubt. All those guys from the islands, they were all tough. Peter Maivia, the Samoans, they like to fight, you know. I used to enjoy being with those guys, and they'd call me brother, come on, let's go out. No, I ain't going out with you guys, because you're going to go out and get in a fight, and we'll all wind up in jail. No way, you know.
Were you there when Jacques and Dynamite got their fight?
Yeah, I was there. I actually helped to break it up. I was sitting in the locker room, and we were doing TV at the time, and everybody came in to eat lunch. And then I saw Tommy. We were all, actually, it was Tommy, Pat Patterson, Haku was there, and myself. We were the last ones in the dining room. And then I seen Pat get up and leave. And it was Haku, him, Dynamite, myself. And so we're there shooting the breeze. And then Dynamite says, okay, I got to go do some interviews. Because that day I didn't have to do anything. I said, okay, fine. So he left, and I'm talking to Haku, and I hear this ruckus out in the hallway. I said, what the hell's going on? I come out there, and I see Tommy. He's a bloody mess, and he didn't go off his feet, but he's like, and I grabbed him. And then I looked over, and I seen the biggest Rougeau brother came at him, and I said, you even come near him, I'll kill you right now, you know. And his brother came around, and I grabbed him and threw him up against the wall, and I said, "Get the hell out of here." And I took Tommy, and I said, "Come on, let's go to the bathroom. We got to clean you up." So I took him in the bathroom. He was just a bloody mess. They hit him with knuckle dusters, right? So we get in there, and I start cleaning him up. And I take his lip up, and he had this ugly gash in his lip, you know. And he says, "It looked bad." I said, "Oh, man, you're going to have to go to the hospital. I have this stitch. This don't look good." So then Davey heard about it. He come running up. He came in the locker room, and he found me, and Hogan and them came in there because apparently they were in talking to Vince. Well, so these two ran down there and beating on the door afterwards. They're going to kill us, you know. I said, "Who's going to kill you?" Everybody, you know. So they came in there, and they found us. So Davey got mad. He wanted to go back there, and he knocked a few of his teeth out, right? So I said, "No." I said, "Look, first thing, we got to get him some medical care. So you take him to the hospital, we'll take care of these guys, you know." So I came down there. I actually went down. I was going down to look for him, but they took off. They disappeared. So they took him to the hospital. He came back from the hospital. And of course, now everybody got wind of what happened. They were all pissed off because nobody liked the Bruisers anyway, right? So they were really in deep crack.
Right.
So they took off. So Vince sent them home. They sent Dynamite home. And they were gone for like a week. And the Rougeaus came, the first day back was on a show that I was on. And they walked in the locker room and they shook everybody's hand. And I'm putting on my boots. And the one comes around me, the tall one, and he sticks his hand out. And he says, "Hey, Ben, the house is gone." And he stick his hand out to shake at me. And I looked at him and said, "Get the fuck away from me." I said, "I don't like what you did. Just get away from me right now," you know. And that was the end of that.
You don't think it was deserved for what they did to Jacques?
No way, shape, or form.
Okay.
No way, shape, or form. What they did to Dynamite?
Yeah, I
No.
mean, from what happened with Jacques first, wasn't it like a receipt or something?
Well, yeah, because, you know, and Tommy and them brought it on themselves, too, because they used to rib everybody.
Right,
you
right.
know? But I was on the show that somebody screwed up their gear, and they blamed Dynamite and them for it, and they didn't do it.
Right.
Because they actually left before these guys even got there. So they didn't do it. So this time they were innocent, which most times they weren't. Most times they did something to somebody, you'd always go, it was Dynamite or Davey. We know they did it. So it wasn't, you know, and they had an altercation. He beat the crap out of the little one. It was between them, and I didn't like what they pulled, you know. And I still say to this day, until they prove different, Pat Patterson was in on it. Because you don't jump somebody when your boss is standing there. You don't do that. Yeah, he was protective of her, and he was really jealous of her, and he was possessive of her. But the only trouble we had was down in one of the SummerSlams. I came into the ring. It was my turn to run in, and he jumped me, and he kicked me in the gut, and my whole lunch almost wound up in my throat. And I figured, okay, so I'm going to get him back for this. I ain't even going to wait, right? So I threw him in. We were going around there, and somehow we wound up together. And the people wanted to see us go at it. And I threw him in, and I gave him a clothesline. I clotheslined him in the throat. Almost killed him. Almost killed him. And he went back there. He was half dead. and Elizabeth said, "Are you okay?" "Yeah, oh, the guy was hurting me, you know. But it was funny. We were down in Daytona Beach, and we were building up for him and I to work. And they said they wanted us to have a pull apart where I'd go in and they had a jobber in there with me. I beat him, gave him the ghetto blast, I covered him like in 30 seconds. Then I got on the microphone and I started calling Elizabeth out, saying she was doing favors for Jack Tunney and all this. He came out, he jumped on me, and we started going around, and they came and they pulled us off, right? Vince didn't like it. He says to me, he didn't say nothing to me. He said it to him. He says, "I don't like what I saw." He says, "He made you look weak. You're the world champ." He says, "You should go out. You guys should do it again." Well, I was against it. I said, "Okay, we're doing TV tomorrow. Why don't we do it there? The people seen us do this already."
Right.
You know? Nope. They want it done right. So Jake's father was still the agent, Grizzly Smith. Again, that's his bad news. They want you back there. You guys got to do the same thing again. I said, "They just seen us do this. Let's do it tomorrow." I said, "No, they won't." "Okay, fine." So we go out there. Now he comes in. He's fired up. He's throwing punches and he's kicking and he's trying to do all kinds of stuff. I said, "This guy is losing his mind." That's how I took him and threw him down, right? And they came out and they pulled us apart. And when they did, I see this hand like going for my eyes, you know? And I grabbed the wrist and I looked and it was him and I pulled him away. So they pulled me out the ring and he's on the apron. He went to dive on me and I just stepped aside. He went on the floor. And I was just really mad, you know? So I grabbed him. We were supposed to go back through the curtain and nobody actually saw what would happen, right? And I actually grabbed him, spun him around, and I threw him through the curtain. And then they had the big blackboard up there with all the names of who was going to work with who that night. And I just came in and just kicked the blackboard over. I was pissed. And they said, okay, bad news. You don't have to do no interviews tonight. You could go home, right? So I said, okay, fine. I went in, took a shower. I passed the room there where Vince, they would always set a room off for him like his office. He's laying on the floor there. And Elizabeth's fan of it and everything. And he's all purple. And I look in there and I just look and I go, Randy, you okay? Yes. See you later. And I walked up, took a shower, and went home.
Was he pretty paranoid in general? Because a lot of people say he would lock Elizabeth in like rooms and stuff like that.
He one time went in Indianapolis, and I don't know where he was. I was supposed to work with him that night. I did work with him that night, and I walked by, and their door was open, and she was sitting in there. And I go, hey, Elizabeth, how's it going? How you doing today? So fine. She says, come on in and talk to me, bad news. I said, no way am I going to. I didn't say it to her. I'm thinking to myself. So I got to work with this guy tonight. We're going to wind up fighting in that ring.
All right.
So I just stood in the doorway, and I'm talking to her. She says, come on and sit down. I said, no, I got something to do, you know. And I just spoke to him, and I left. But he was real paranoid. The whole thing was just a total lie. You know, I came in there, and they said, okay, we're going to put you with Piper. We think that could be a good match and everything. They said, we got big plans. You guys are going to go all over the territory, and you're going to do this and that. And, of course, after WrestleMania 6, they just totally lied to me. And they said, when I came back, we actually had 2 weeks off, and we started up in Providence, Rhode Island. Well, I'm gearing myself up to go with Piper because I know somewhere down the road, before the week's out, I'm going to wind up kicking his ass. I knew that because I didn't like his mouth or anything. The guy's a racist and all that. So I come in and I say, okay, what match Piper and I are on? They said, you're not working with Piper. You're working with Jake the Snake. And I go, really? So did anybody tell you? I said, no. It's the first I heard of it. You guys are working the main event. I said, okay, fine. And I was happy. I was was thrilled. Because I knew sooner or later, like I said, I would have got fired because I would have wound up kicking his butt. And I loved working with Jake. He was a good guy to work with.
How did you find out that Piper was going to wear the blackface and stuff?
Oh, they called me in the office and told me. I thought it was the stupidest thing I ever seen. And I figured, let him go ahead and do it. And one of these brothers are going to get, in one of these towns are going to get a hold of him, and he's going to be sorry. You know?
When you told Vince about that, you know, what was his reaction?
Well, he thought, you know, we think this is a great idea. This is good. What do you think? Yeah, it sounds great, Vince.
The one match you guys had was a double count out. Why was there not a decisive finish?
Well, because he was bitching and complaining. He didn't want to. They actually wanted him to put me over.
Right.
He didn't want to do it. You know. And I said, look, man, I'm not about winning belts. I'm not about winning some phony championships.
Right.
I'm about making money. You gonna pay me? I don't care what we do. One is I ain't gonna do no job for him if he ain't gonna do one for me. So we can have whatever. Well, how about a double count? Sure, no problem.
Do you think you should have went over anyway because Piper was part-time and you were there full-time?
I thought so, but they didn't. And then, especially when the pay disparity wound up, he wound up getting $50,000 US, and they paid me $10,000 US and 2,000 Canadian. I really, that was it. I said, this is it. I had enough of this.
Were you there the night that Brody shot on him in the cage?
Oh yeah, I was there. It was funny because I worked with Brody the next week in Lakeland, and it was actually supposed to be Lex Luger. And they called me up at the office, and they had me on the speakerphone, right? And I could hear Humperdinck in the back just laughing his head off. He went to the office and said, I can't work with him. That guy is crazy. He says he could give me a boot to the face, and I'd have to have plastic surgery done. And I could hear them, and Matsuda's talking to me, and I could hear Humperdinck just rolling in the back, right? He said, Alan, could you do us a favor? I said, yeah. We want you, when you go to Lakeland, we're going to put you in the match with Brody, right? He says, you get along with him? I said, Frank, yeah, I get along with him well. He says, because you saw what happened the other night down there with Bruiser. I said, yeah, and he deserved it. He deserved what he got. Because here's a guy that's been in the business a long time, knew what he was doing. You go, out of respect, you ask him, what do you want to do? And he'll tell you what he wants. Okay, you do this, this, this. I'll do this, this, this. Well, he went and told Brody, he says, yeah, we're going to do it this way, and we're going to have the match this way. And I'm looking over, and I'm in the eye, go, this ain't going to be pretty. This is not going to be pretty. As soon as they went out there, I ran out there because I know Brody was going to kick his ass. I knew it. And he went out there and beat the crap out of him. He's screaming like, help, help, open up the door, let me out. He said, and they actually opened the gate and let him out. He ran out the locker room.
Yeah.
I mean, he ran back to the locker room, and I'm on the floor rolling because I knew this was coming up. Just the way he's telling, and I could see Brody there. He's got this little knife, and he was just peeling this piece of wood, and he's just looking at him, not saying nothing. This is not going to be pretty. This is not. I'm going to be a witness to this, and it wasn't.
What were your thoughts on Bruiser Brody?
I love the guy. He was a good guy. He was a businessman. He went out there. He did his job. Did what you wanted him to do, but he didn't take no crap off you either. You know, he was a guy cut from the same cloth with me. He didn't take no crap off nobody.
What are your thoughts on Brody jumping back and forth between All Japan and New Japan?
Well, that was a business decision because after Abdullah got him to jump. And when Abdullah left and he went over there and he talked to Bruiser to come over, which is a big mistake by New Japan Pro Wrestling, because he was totally crazy. He's telling me we're down in Florida together, and he's going, "Yeah, but Alan, I never put over Inoki." I'm going, "What do you care? As long as you get paid." They were paying him $12,000 a week. You know, one time he actually left. He left the tour. You get paid. The last day of the tour, they will pay you before the match was over with. As soon as you come in, they give you your money. They call you in, they pay you, right? Well, he left. Him and Snooker followed him. And I asked Jimmy, "What was you thinking?" He said, well, Frank left and I went with him. I don't know why I left. You know? They didn't even collect the money. They just left.
Wow.
So now we get to Hawaii and we're doing a show there, and he's on the show. The office asked me to go in there and talk to him. Say, okay, Alan, could you do us a favor? Go in there and talk to Brody and see why he did what he did, right? So I go in and ask him. I said, "Frank, what's going on, man? Why'd you leave the tour like that? You didn't even collect your money, man." Well, I didn't like the way they treat me. What do you mean? I said, "You were treated first-class treatment. What are you talking about?" "Well, some of those times we were in the beds and fit and everything." I said, "Hey, Andre went through this." I said, "I'm 6'2". You're 6'4". Andre's 7'2" or whatever. I said, they put us in the best hotels they have in those little towns. When we got back to Japan, to Tokyo, I said, "Weren't you you had king-size bed? Weren't you in the best hotel, 5-star hotel at Kale Plaza?" He goes, "Yes." I said, "So what's your beef?" He goes, "Yeah, I guess you're right." So I called Inoki in and I said, "Go in there and talk to him. Everything's okay." And they worked it out. He came back for a short while and then he left again.
What are your thoughts on what happened at Bruiser Brody in Puerto Rico?
That was a sad day for me because I'll never forget. Rick Rude came up to me. We were in Denver, and he came up to me and he was like white as a ghost. And he said, "They killed him. They killed him." And I'm going, "They killed who? What are you talking about?" He just kept saying, "They killed him." I said, "Killed who? What are you talking about?" He said, "They killed Brody in Puerto Rico." And I just dropped my bag. I couldn't believe it. I went off in the corner and I actually cried. Broke my heart. I got home like 5 in the morning and Brett called me up. And I'm going, "Brett, what's he calling me? The guy never speaks to me." He says, "Vince McMahon wants to speak to you." And I said, "What's he want to speak to me?" "He wants to talk to you about something." "Okay." So then an hour later, Vince calls up. And now I'm all half asleep and he says, "Hey, bad news." Like we just seen each other the other day. And I hadn't seen him in years. He goes, "Oh, this is Vince McMahon." I go, "Who?" Vince McMahon. I said, "All right, cut the crap out. Who is this?" Because I forgot Brett already told me. I'm like in La La Land.
Right.
He says, "This is Vince." And I said, "Oh, okay." And then my head started clearing. I realized, okay. So I said, "Yeah." And then he made me all these promises to come in. And, he says, the thing is, we never had a bad news in here before. I said, "Yeah, I remember when you used to work with my dad." And he says, "We'd like to bring you in here. We got big plans for you and everything. We never had a black world champ. And, you're a heel. And this will be great to work with. And Hogan's going to go off and do a movie and come back a year later."
So he kind of promised you the belt.
Yeah. They promised me all this stuff. And, of course, he never kept his word. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
What were your initial thoughts of Vince?
I always say this to everybody, and this is a true story. The guy was a genius. I say because he's really screwed up the business. Marketing, and he knew how to bring wrestling up on a big scale. But if you shook hands with him, count your fingers. Because he would stab you in the back or steal your fingers or whatever. Because the guy is a snake in the grass. You can't believe nothing he tells you. People would ask me all the time, "Is he actually acting or is he really like that?" I said, "The guy is being himself." He's an asshole and he's being himself.
What were your initial thoughts of the locker room? You pretty much knew a lot of the guys from early days.
Yeah, I knew most of the people there, so it was a lot of tension in the locker room. It wasn't that same feeling that we all used to get in there and guys would rib each other and they would be playing cards and they'd have a good time. A lot of big money was starting to get involved, not like what they make now, but it was still a lot bigger than we were making. And there was a lot of tension there because this guy wanted to work with Hogan because you knew if you were on the card with him, you're going to make big money. I
guess, were you accepted right away in the locker room? Or
I don't think so, because I heard a story. Vince came up to me one day and he says, "Yeah, I understand that you get along with everybody now." And I'm going like, "What is this guy talking about, Because he actually thought, because he actually told me this. This was his excuse. He says, well, yeah, we did promise to give you the belt and everything, but he claims it wasn't him. It was the office staff. Talked him out of it.
Huh.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, really, Vince? He says, yeah, I wanted to put the strap on you, but they talked me out of it. They said, well, you know, this guy was a shooter and everything, and suppose he don't want to give the belt back to Hogan. And then he says, and I want to ask you a question. I understand that Antonio Inoki paid you $2 million to you get in the ring to break Hogan's arm. And I'm going, what are you talking about?
Huh.
I said, are you crazy?
Huh.
I said, first of all, one is he didn't pay me no $2 million. I have no idea what you're talking about. I said, and second of all, if you put the strap on me and I don't want to give it back, fire me and make a new one. What's the big deal, you know? I said, I don't want to carry that thing around in my belt bag anyway. It's just more weight, that's all.
Right. Did Hogan change at all now that he was in WWE on top?
I never really hung out with him a lot, but I think he did. You could see there was a change in him. You know, like he took care of the guys that were his buddies because it was just a big clique there. Everybody had their own little clique,
Right.
their own little crew, and they looked out for each other. I was always the outsider, and that worked in my gimmick well because I was the loner and I didn't have no partners and all that, so it worked good for me.
When Senior died, did he run the relationship with? Did Junior run the relationship with New Japan?
We ruined the relationship with everybody.
Right.
You know, Senior had good relationships with everybody. Like I said, there was 33 different companies. They all had their own TVs, their own territories. Senior never stepped on nobody's feet. He would come to you and say, okay, I need ABC to come work for me, and I'll send you C, D, and E. And they say, okay. They would switch off. C, D, and E would go and work for these guys for 8 or 9 months or a year, and ABC would work for him. Then they would switch off again, and that's how he did business. This guy took over. I remember that merchandising contract they gave us. He says, okay, not only can you not work for Japan, you cannot work for anybody in the universe. The universe? Man, you mean this guy controls Mars and everything,
Right.
you know? Like, it was unbelievable.
At this point in your career, were you making more money in WWF or did you make more money prior to New Japan?
I actually, when you worked it out and everything, I actually made more money in Japan. Because when Vince called me up that day and he says, look, I want you to come work for me for 5 years. He says, after that time, you're going to make so much money you can retire. You don't ever have to work again. This is what he told me, right? So one time we're on the road, Davey, Dynamite, Brett, and myself. And I never asked nobody about their money. What their money is their business. What money I make is my business, right? And so I called up my wife. We're on the road. And I said, did my checks come in? Yeah. She says, yeah. So I said, what did I get? She says, if I tell you, you're going to kill somebody. So I'm not going to tell you. I'm going to wait till you get home. I said, what do you mean? She said, I'm not going to tell you. I said, okay. So we used to take an advance of $100, you know, because we had to pay for our cars and our rooms and all that, right? I get home and there's a check for $250. So I said, okay. Now I'm getting mad. I'm going to call, no, don't call Vince up because guys, little flunkies. Then I'm never going to get him on the phone. I'm going to wait till I see him at TV. And I went in there and I said, I didn't know. When you told me to come here, you were going to retire me in 5 years, that you were going to retire me to the poorhouse.
Huh.
I said, I never made $250 in years in this business. What the hell is this? You know, he started with the excuses. I lost money on that movie, No Holds Barred, and this and that. And I knew he was lying because that summer, usually summer, you know, it gets slow. But for that year, we did good business everywhere because of the movie, even though it stunk.
Right.
So I knew he made go. So what he was doing was off the top, taking his money back that he lost on the movie. And we were all getting screwed.
Right.
So I told him, I said, hey, I don't need this. I'll go back to Japan. He says, well, if you want to go, I'll call. I said, you don't need to call for me. So I can pick up the phone and talk to Inoki right now. I said, I don't need you to call for me at all. I said, but this is bullshit, you know.
Kamala was telling us too.
Yeah. I said, this is bullshit. I said, you know, you bring me in here on all these lies. You've been lying to me from day one, and this is nonsense. So then he says, no, I got other plans. And of course, it kept going on, and finally, enough's enough already. Yeah.
Did you find it odd that you did jobs pretty much everywhere around the Horn prior to SummerSlam? Or?
I didn't care. I didn't care because I told them I was leaving. They knew it. They knew sooner or later because I had enough of the lying. I had enough of the phony promises. And I gave them, actually, the day that I got fired, I gave them my notice that I was leaving. They said, no, they begged me to stay to November. With the thing is, no, you're not fired. No, you can't quit. You're fired. That type of thing.
How were you treated on the way out? Like
What do you mean?
Before you got fired?
Oh, I was doing jobs and everything. And then, of course, Vince, and I never said nothing. I did the jobs. They had me, all of a sudden, they put me in with Neidhart. I'm doing a job for him. They put me in that one. I can see the hand written on the wall, right?
Right.
They're supposed to be punishing me now. Okay, so I didn't say anything. We get there, and I said, I asked Vince, this is what really made me laugh. I said, Vince, what's going on? You know, like you brought me in here with all these promises, and now all of a sudden you're jobbing me out? What do you mean you're being jobbed out?
Yeah.
I said, Vince, you're not going to sit there and tell me you don't know what's going on. These guys do not sneeze and wipe their nose without your say-so. Nobody told me nothing. What the heck's going on? I said, Vince, you're doing a good job of acting there.
Right.
You know, like cut the crap, all right?
You called
You
him
know.
and said it?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Told him right there. Actually, the last time that I had a run-in with Vince was when I gave my notice. And I was in San Francisco. We were supposed to wrestle Sacramento. I get in there. We're going to wrestle Sacramento that night. We go up to Sacramento, and then the next day wrestle San Francisco. So I get in the car, and I tell everybody the story. My wife was there with me because when we did the California swing, I'd get her a ticket because I had so many frequent flyer points. And she gets in there, and I'm driving. And she says, Alan, I'm going to say something to you. She says, I never got into your business. You always did what you wanted to do, but I'm going to say something because I love you, and I don't like what I see. She says, and she just gave it to me. When I got out the car, I was about 2 feet tall.
Huh.
I was about this big, and I couldn't say a word. And I said, you know, she's right. She's right. So they lied to you. They done now. They jobbing you this and that and the other. No, okay. So now we're in Alabama, in Huntsville, and we're supposed to be at TV at 12 o'clock. I show up at 6. I'm there.
Right.
I'm not going in. I left my stuff in the car. I'm going in. The last thing I'm going to do in life is tell Vince off. And I mean, tell him off, right? So now I come in. I walk in there and everybody's looking at me. Uh-oh. They see me come in, right? Because they knew I was always on time. I was there. I was never late or anything, right? Here I walk in at 6 o'clock. There's this lineup. You got to make like an appointment to see Vince. You know, he's Mr. God. I walk in there. I said, who's in there with Vince? They said, Greg, the Hammer Valentine. Open up the door. And Greg is sitting in there. I said, Vince says, hey, Bendos, how's it going? I said, I want to see you. He says, well, I got Greg here first. And then I said, no. After Greg leaves here, you're going to see me. And I went out the door and I just stood there like this and I waited. And they're all looking, uh-oh, something's going to happen tonight.
Right.
As soon as he came out, he goes, Bendos, what's going on? I said, cut the crap. And then I just gave it to him. I said, I'm sick of you lying to me. I said, I'm sick of you BSing me. I said, you brought me here on the line and I'm sick of it. I said, as of tonight, you got my notice. I quit. You're right. You're right. I didn't keep my word to you. And he was all humble and everything, you know. And it was funny because when I walked in there, Pat was sitting in there. And I said, you, get out of here. I said, you heard what I said. Don't make me say it to you again. Get out. He took off, right? And then I'm in there and I'm just giving it to Vince. I'm just laying it in on the record. And then Pat opens the door. I said, what did I tell you? Boom, he ran out the door. Now, Chief J Strongbow, because he loved it. He loved it. I told Vince off, right? He says, Alan, if you open up that door, 50 guys would have fell in the room. And we're all trying to, did you hear what he said? Oh, man, I can't believe you said that to Vince, you know? He said, you open up, 50 guys would have fell in. He said, they were all listening. I said, hey, I told the truth. You know, the guy brought me in here on false pretenses. Well, the first time I met him, it was funny. He came over because he was a big draw in Japan. Big draw. Actually, the first tour that I was on, I wasn't actually on the tour. I worked with Sakaguchi, and then they took me on tour with them to show me what was going on. And he was on the tour, and he was just a big card. So after a couple of years, they had me in a match with him in the tag, and I looked up at him, and I'm going, man, is this guy big? You know, I just couldn't believe how big he was. But he was, before he became injured and he started having problems and everything, he was one hell of a worker for a big guy. He set the standard for the Giants, you know. I don't think there's still a Giant today that could do what he did.
What happened on the bus between you and Andre? There was an incident or something?
Well, yeah. I was on the bus and Dusty Rhodes was on there, and actually Hulk Hogan was sitting behind me. And I used to sit 2 seats from the front, and he was in the back there. And I don't know if he was talking to Dusty. I think Chavo Sr. was on there too. And he started making these racist remarks, and he started throwing the N-word around and everything. And I'm like half sleeping. I can't believe what I'm hearing. You know? What? So then I said Hogan, not Hogan, excuse me. I said, Giant, Andre. Yeah, what is it? I said, watch your mouth. I said, I don't like what you're saying. I said, that's an insult to me, you know. And so he didn't say nothing. And then he, as the bus was going, he says, bad news. I said, yeah. He says, go fuck yourself. So I told the bus driver, pull over.
Huh.
I said, pull over. I said, you come on out this bus and you tell me that to my face. So he wouldn't get out the bus. And Stan Hansen was there too. And then we got off the bus to the hotel, and Stan was trying to, because he knew I was just really just pissed off, right? And he says, Alan, hey, he's drunk. Don't worry about it. I said, I don't want to hear that. And I went up to my room. And I didn't sleep all night because it really bothered me, So the next day, I came down early, and we were going to the next town, and I was waiting by the elevator. And as he got off the elevator, I said, Andre, I want to talk to you. Well, what is it? I said, let's go outside. And he didn't want to go. I said, no, let's step outside. If I wanted to do something to you, I'd have jumped you as soon as he got off the elevator. Let's go outside right now. And I told him, I said, look, I don't appreciate the way you were talking on the bus. I said, you never hear me insult your people. He said, well, I'm Polish and people. And I said, you don't hear that from me. So if you feel that way, that's your business. I don't have to listen to that nonsense, I said, don't let me ever hear you say that again. So he apologized. And for quite a while there, it was tension between us. We never would speak. We were always on different tours, the same tour and everything, but we never spoke. But before he passed away, we buried the hatchet and, we sat down and we talked about it.
No, Hogan was over on the tour, I believe it was like in the early 80s, probably 1980 actually, and you teamed with Hulk on a lot of occasions. What was that like?
Yeah, it was good. Hulk was quite the character. I used to like to rib him a lot, and he was something else. So let me go back on the story about Hulk. That incident with the Giant, he was actually sitting in the row behind me, and when I told the bus driver to pull over, and I actually had my earrings in, and I took them out and put them in my bag. Now, I didn't know this later. Hulk told me this a couple of days later. He says, Alan, I'd like to tell you something. And I said, what is that? He says, when I saw you reach out in your bag, he said, I ducked up under the chairs. And what are you talking about? He says, I never seen nobody talk to Andre like this. I figured this guy's got a gun. He's going to come out. He's going to turn around. He's going to shoot him, look over, see me. And then he's going to shoot me too. I said, why did I do that? He said, I don't know. Maybe you were mad. You're going to shoot everybody, And he told me that. I just busted out laughing. I said, you kidding? He said, I swear, man. He says, I thought you were going to pull a gun out and shoot the guy.
Wow.
Were you involved in a match? I could be wrong. It was like Bigelow and Andre in Mexico when Andre had too many tequilas. And
I remember that.
Were you? What happened there?
True story. You talking about the one where he shit on me?
Yeah.
Okay. This is the last time I saw Andre alive. Because he was supposed to come back. We're both supposed to come back, go home, come back a month later. And then he went to his father's funeral and passed away. But he had diarrhea, and plus he was drinking too. So he gets into the ring there, and Bam Bam was my partner, and he shoots me across the ring, and he says, oh, big ass boss. He don't call everybody boss, right? And he gives it to me, and all of a sudden everything went. I'm like laying in the corner, and he just let go, and it's all over me. And I fell out the ring, and I'm about to puke, And so I left. We're in the bull ring in Mexico, and I went up the stairs, and you go up the stairs, and there are people lined along the line there, and they're cursing me and everything, and they're going like, wow, what is this smell,
Yeah.
And it was me, and I went in, and I didn't take off my boots or nothing. I went in and just jumped in the shower, everything on it, and I felt sorry for the guy. I mean, he was just sick. That's all. I just let it go. But that's a true story. Everybody asks me that. Oh, yeah, it's true.